Will the clerk please read the statement?
Adequate notice of this regular meeting was provided to the public and the press on January 6, 2023, and was posted at the municipal building in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-7.
Please join me as we salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have to call for a moment
Oh,
of silence for the
that's
victims
what I was
of
gonna do.
9/11. Well, I jumped you.
You stepped on
Victims
me.
of 9/11 and the first responders in the military that have fought and protected us throughout the last 22 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick.
Be quick. Be quick.
Please play a roll.
Councilmember DeStacy,
Present.
Councilmember Rizzuto,
Here.
Councilmember Sparta, Councilmember Tadrick,
Here.
Council President Guccieri.
Here. We have something really nice today. We have a proclamation for an Eagle Scout Award for Edward Schmidt. Since you have a close connection with the family, do you want to read
Yes,
it?
I do. Thank you very
Thank
much. Eagle Scout Award for Edward W. Schmidt. Whereas there are many from all walks of life that step forward in dedication and commitment to provide service above oneself in the daily life of our community. Whereas through Boy Scouting, boys learn of their importance in the world and their duty to the world around them. And whereas Boy Scouting has inspired millions of boys and men with the highest ideals of character, conduct, and patriotism. And whereas through hard work and perseverance, Edward has achieved his Eagle Scout award and rank in Boy Scouting, and his family, friends, and members of this community applaud Edward's achievements. Now, therefore, the Township Council of Vernon Township, along with the mayor, congratulate Edward on achieving his Eagle Scout Award and thank him for the contributions he has made to this community and wish him much success in all of his future endeavors. As Council President mentioned, I happen to have a very close relationship with Edward and his family. And I can tell you that the road that he traveled to get this award is not one of ease. It took him 21 new additional merit badges, as well as the completion of a work for the community. And for those of us who have had the privilege of placing flags at Glenwood Cemetery, and those of us who have relatives interred there, if you'll notice right around the flagpole, there is a walk and some other improvements. And I'm sorry, this is not walk, but it's a patio type area. And this particular improvement was a need that was noticed by Edward, and he chose to fulfill that need. And that was his particular project. And I probably think there may have been something else, but I'm not aware of it. So I really think that the work that you have done, both in gaining your merit badges and the give back to the community, is something that as a community we should really applaud. Thank you very, very much. I would ask Marcy if you have a certificate.
Yes, I need this.
Edward, do you
Hi, Natalie,
Is
the
it-
mayor.
Okay.
Yep.
you want to just tell us quickly what you did?
I have a little thing I can read.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, great.
By the, yep, I'm right there. Tell us what your project was.
Well, first I want to thank you for such an achievement, the recognition of it. I was relocated to this town of Vernon about 12 years ago to be adopted by the Schmick family. And I've been loved and put forth by this great Vernon community by partaking in many of their community programs, such as the Vernon Junior Police Academy, their youth soccer and youth basketball programs. As a Boy Scout in Vernon, I'm nonetheless proud to have my project be in its common grounds for decades to come. My project, the Glenwood Cemetery Veterans Memorial Reflection Site, is a full-size patio placed for us as a community to take the well-needed time to reflect and relax on our fallen veterans, as well as our loved ones in the cemetery of Glenwood. It also serves as the main cemetery site for the wreath ceremony, the Wreaths Across America wreath laying ceremony every December in honoring our fallen heroes in combat. As an active scout, I still plan to give back to this amazing community every day and make Vernon better in any form I can do so. It's a small way to give back to this town for everything they've done for me, but once again, I would like to thank you all for this recognition. I hope you stop by the Glenwood Cemetery to take a moment and reflect and enjoy the peace my project aimed to provide.
Very much.
Very nice.
Not know what your project was.
Would you please remain? I think perhaps we'd like to get a picture of you with the mayor and council president. Thank you.
I'm gonna take a picture right here.
Over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
They want
do
to
this.
picture. Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you.
I guess we can do it this way. Turn it this way, what I guess.
If you don't mind, we have to go. So it is, like that, definitely our bright spot in some boring government meetings, so nice to have it here. Okay, before we go to our next item, I just wanted to make a quick statement. We had some community members with some concerns about an animal rescue in part of our town, and I just wanted to address those concerns. The council, the mayor, and animal control department have been working to address concerns expressed by community members regarding an animal rescue operating in our town. We are working to address the safety concerns of the community members who live in that area and to ensure the welfare of the animals kept at that property. Our animal control office has visited the property numerous times and recently with the municipal fire marshal, the municipal health department official, and the detective from the Sussex County Prosecutor's Office. Additionally, the Sussex County Health Department has reached out to the New Jersey Department of Health's Office of Animal Welfare for guidance. Our officials are working on this issue. Violations have been issued and a court date is scheduled. So there is a process going on regarding those concerns, and I just wanted the community to be aware of that. Next on our agenda is a discussion item regarding updating our cannabis ordinance. As the council knows and many in the public know, not the council, I don't think any of us were on the, none of us were on the council in 2021 when that council of that summer opted in to allow cannabis retail, cannabis cultivation, cannabis manufacturing, cannabis wholesale, and cannabis delivery. Is that everything? I think, right? Not all the different options. The previous council of 2021 did opt in for that. Questions have been brought up regarding those ordinances. Mr. Tadrick actually, I think, was very vocal in the spring regarding some concerns he had. if anyone's been paying attention, you know, I am not a supporter of recreational retail cannabis. That is different than medical. And additionally, this ordinance does not address medical. Is that correct, Josh?
That's correct.
That's correct. So this is the discussion we have and the approval of that ordinance in 2021, not to approve any type of medical dispensary. Even I believe the cultivation and the manufacturing is strictly for recreational use. So that's what we are discussing. We met with our town planner, and I think Jessica's on the phone. Yep, she is. Hi, Jessica.
Yes, I'm here.
And Corey Stone, our engineer, Mr. Zelinski had some input. The council has before them 2 draft ordinances to update some gaps. Some in the original ordinance, there was an example of one of those gaps was there was no licensing fees. Big push from that council was all the taxes and revenue that these businesses would bring into our town. Other towns have licensing fees. Our ordinance had no option for a licensing fee. In addition, to gather those taxes, which was again a big push from previous council, there was no mechanism on collecting those taxes. With the CFO's input and looking at other towns, there is in this draft ordinance a mechanism on how to collect those taxes and a process for liens if those taxes are not paid. There's some other issues regarding zoning, which I know is a big concern of many members of our community regarding the zoning issue going on right now. There was just a lot of gaps in that original ordinance. Once we opt in, we cannot opt out. Again, if you've been paying attention, you know I don't support this at all. But we are opted in. So if this council can discuss it, can clean up this ordinance, protect our town in a better way, really get some fees, just in a basic form of licensing applications and licensing renewals. We'll talk about collecting those taxes. Those gaps, at least we can maybe fill those in and protect our town and maybe really get some tax revenue if a business ever opens, because we have given some approvals, even though I've always voted no, there, you know, several approvals have gone through. So I just wanted to kind of lay that foundation so the public knew where we were going with this. This isn't even a first reading of the ordinance. This is truly just a discussion for the council members. They've gotten a draft, and I just wanted to have everyone's feedback and input and be transparent about that process. So that being said, Mr. Dasty, we'll start with you. Do you have any comments or
Yes, I do.
input?
I question why the distance was lowered to 1,000 when it was 2,000. I believe that it should be at 2,000 minimum. I also would like to see added that libraries, any kind of facility that children attend, be it church, be it the library, be it any kind of dance studio, anything where children under the legal age attend, be added to the restriction. I also would like to see that a percentage of the fees that are deducted or obtained, that a certain percentage of that be set aside for youth anti-drug campaign through our school system. Be it flyers, be it speech, whatever, but anything that pertains to our children dedicated to their education about anti-drug use.
Are you talking about the licensing fees? Or are you talking
Yes.
about the?
Well, the license and the 2%, both, and the override. I also would like to see there be a dedication of that override to road maintenance in the township. I think
No, I
town,
understand what you mean when you say a dedication to that override.
so I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I don't understand what you mean when you say a dedication to that override. What does that mean?
In
Um,
dedication of the tax use be dedicated to road maintenance.
all of the 2%.
No, not all of it, a percent of
I
it.
think we already had that resolution.
No, we don't. It's not in here.
We had a separate
Yep.
resolution for that, right, Marcy?
There is a resolution for that.
Was it 50%?
Yeah.
That's a Lynch resolution?
Yeah, yeah, Brian had that. It's a separate,
It's not in this, so I would like to see it in this ordinance.
but it has, there's its own resolution for that, so. I don't, do we need to?
It was an ordinance.
There's a separate ordinance.
There's a separate ordinance for that.
It's a separate order.
And this one doesn't supersede that one. It's still designated correct, like it's still
That one
designated.
As
is,
long as it is included.
okay,
Okay, that's basically it. Oh, the big one is the R2 should not have any kind of cannabis farm. It's private, that's residential, and it should not in any way be in a residential area. It should be confined to our industrial or commercial area.
I think, maybe Jessica can answer that because you do have a copy of the map to show us, right, Jessica? 'Cause she did.
Yes,
um,
I do. I just wanted to address a couple things.
Sure,
So
thank you.
the minimum that was put in is really just a talking point. It is at 2,000 now. I understand that some have requested it to lower it to 1,000. So that's a talking and discussion point. Under the licensing, actually on page 11, there is those references to the dedications of the funds, a total of 15% of the funds going to training and equipment for Vernon Township police officers, drug recognition experts and associated costs, and substance abuse programs. So that's in there currently, and a total of 10% of the funds received from these taxes will be designated to municipal planning and zoning department for administration and enforcement. So those two are in the licensing ordinance. We moved it in there. So it would be coincide with the as the council president described, the methodology for creating the tax on the
I would like
very
to see it
entity.
worded that it is for youth, training for youth. That's all. You can,
Okay.
you can have it for the police, but I really want to see it designated for the youth training and anti-drug campaigns.
Okay. And so for the various zones that the cannabis would be permitted in, what we did with all of the uses was to make them all conditional uses so that we could then list the requirements. But for this iteration, we have left them in the same zones. So the R2 for cultivation only stayed in as that was in there before. But that can be a discussion point. I think Marcy would have to allow me to share if you want me to share the zoning map.
Right? Give me 1 second. I believe you can.
Okay, so can you see the zoning map?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the R2 zone. It's mostly in the Vernon Valley. The limitation in the ordinance, let's see, let me scroll down to it. It's only for cannabis cultivation in the R2. They have to be over 6 acres. For Highlands Preservation Area, they have to get a Highlands exemption or exception prior to going to Land Use Board. All facilities would need to be within buildings, heated, air-conditioned, controlled buildings, limiting signage only to the name and identification of the business. Site plan would be required. There are odor control requirements. Buffering of cultivation facilities in the R2 zone would need to be 100 feet from all property lines. Limitations on lighting would be 0.1 foot candles at the property line. License requirements, they would be required to get a township cannabis license prior to applying to the land use board. One thing that we did place in the licensing ordinance was limitations on the number of licenses. So we thought it would make sense for an entity to get the license first and then go to the board so that there's not more than licenses are permitted trying to get approvals through the land use board. State license is required, and then obviously subject to all rules and regulations of the state. So this dark brown here is where the R2 is located. And then the other facilities are primarily located in commercial zones. So the retail is in the C1 through C3, as well as the LI, the TC, Town Center, and the MBMU. So that's primarily located along Route 94. There are some small commercial areas in other parts of the township where they would also be permitted, subject to getting the license and meeting the standards of the ordinance as well.
So Jessica, I just want to go back, when you said conditional, so when it's in the R2 zone, if it meets the requirements of over 6 acres, let's say for cultivation, but it's conditional, they still need to go before land use, and land use can then determine those conditions and potentially deny it based on circumstances of that particular piece of property. Is that correct?
Correct. So what it does as a difference is they have to get site plan approval. They have to go to the land use board. If they don't meet all of the conditions, then it becomes what's called a conditional use variance, which is a harder variance to get than a permitted use. Permitted uses generally are difficult to deny. So if it's a conditional use and they're not meeting all of the conditions, then the board has more standing to potentially deny the application if they felt that there were too many impacts.
Okay.
Jessica, a quick question, or Corey, whoever could answer this. I didn't see it and I might have missed it. Is there any way we can put a time limitation on these people? They come before us. We have one that's sitting almost a year. You know, they haven't even made an application to the land use board yet for a retail establishment. Can we put some kind of time limit on this? Because I don't want to be in a situation that somebody comes 4 years, 3 months in, gets an approval and sits on not doing anything for 4 or 5 years. It changes with a new council that's not opting in anymore, and they're still covered. Is there any way we can do that? Or to prevent people from just going through the application process, not doing anything and selling the license off? Because we know that's what big cannabis growers do. They buy somebody's license who's gone through the process. Is there anything we can put in there?
I think those types of items could be addressed in the licensing ordinance, and I would defer that to Josh as well, but those are licensing things that maybe it could expire after a certain amount of time if it's not utilized, or, you know, and that it can't be transferred.
Great, thanks.
So,
Wouldn't the annual
That is the-
renewal cover that?
No, not necessarily.
well, yeah, we did.
Yeah, there is also an annual
Yeah.
renewal.
Yeah.
But it'd have to be in there, correct?
We
You
have
couldn't
to
just say
set
no.
parameters, and maybe that's something that just needs to look into further, but I think setting parameters and targets, you know, because we are in a position where there's been 3 resolutions of support for retail establishments, and none of them have opened their doors yet. So
They haven't even
perhaps-
they haven't even applied to the land. use
Yeah,
board.
they haven't applied, no movement has occurred. So perhaps setting some guidelines, within 6 months, come before the land use board, or, let us know your plan. And then if that doesn't happen, maybe the mayor reaches out to them. And if there's still no response, maybe within a year, we rescind the resolution of support. So it's not held up if somebody else wants it. Not that I want a business here, but,
But does the resolution of support allow them to move forward? If it's just a support resolution, I mean, do they need it?
well, they,
Josh, do they even need a resolution of
The
support?
resolution of support is needed for the license the state of New Jersey issues.
Okay,
Different than the license that the municipality would issue. What Jessica's speaking to is a municipal licensing requirement, and tied to that would be a licensing fee. The state has significant control over the issuance of licenses. And part of that process requires someone applying for a license to present a letter or resolution of support from the municipal council.
so that resolution of support that we've issued in those instances was done prior to the state issuing their permanent license. They might have come before us with a conditional license.
In order to get a license from the state, there are various requirements you have to meet. One of those is obtaining resolution of support.
So our resolution comes first.
Yes.
So potentially they could get our resolution and then not get the license.
Correct.
But we've had people come before us with provisional licenses, so what is
Come before who?
us?
The governing body?
Yes,
I know they,
yeah,
wait, and what,
we had a retailer come before us and they said they had a provisional license before they came before us,
That was in Dovita.
with the first one, whatever that was.
That wasn't the first one.
The one that's
One was
going in.
No, that was not
Dollar
the time,
General.
one, second one.
Castle of Greens was the second one in
Second one.
Dovita.
Yeah,
Castle of Greens had a provisional, but then they
Yeah.
never moved the
I'd
property.
have to,
Because they came in, he specifically said that night, I was in the audience, and he said, we have a provisional license. You already approved this site, so basically
That's
that's,
in Dovita.
okay,
mhm.
and he had a provisional license when he walked in without a letter.
I'm not familiar with all the details of the application, so I don't want to guess and I don't want to speculate.
I'm not guessing or speculating, I'm stating what was on the record.
I understand that. I'm not doubting that. I'm just, I'm not that familiar with what they had when they presented their application to the state or before they came before the council, so.
Okay.
I would like to.
Research that and let us know.
Absolutely.
I would like to point out that as, although you say they can appear in front of they will appear before the land use board. You currently have an application that is appearing in front of them that does not meet our code. What it is less than 6 acres. It's
I don't think
5
we
point.
should be talking about a particular
Yes.
issue right
No, I'm talking about, we have things in our, you're saying they're gonna go before the land use board, but we have issues right here in our ordinance that they are not abiding by. So the land use board is not a stop.
Yes, but I think because the current ordinance is not a conditional use in R2. Is that correct, Jessica?
Yeah, that's correct. It's permitted. So the
It's a permitted-
variances are less intense than if it was a conditional use.
Well, how about the fact that we require Highlands exception prior to appearing before the land use board, and they are there without that?
Those standards are proposed. Those aren't in place right now. So
Okay.
those would be proposed.
So that's an example of how we're cleaning it up, Peg, because that's
Okay.
not,
That's all I just wanted to know.
Right.
didn't have that in there. So this is a way to
Okay.
kind of tighten up the ordinance.
So it's been added to tighten up the requirements. Thank you very much.
Correct. In
Excellent.
response to some of the concerns from what we've
Thank you.
seen, yes.
Thank you for answering the question.
You're
Have
welcome.
anything, Donna?
Yeah, the number of retail establishments. I'm reading it correctly. Page 5. Cannabis retailer shall be a prohibited use and not permitted in any zones within the township of Vernon. In the new ordinance, is that correct?
Oh, no, that was that was one of the ones that I think was voted by the previous council and then it was, right? Was that the, what are you looking at?
This, I'm looking at ordinance 2023 XXX, which includes that on page.
Page 5?
I think it's referencing. I think you
That was
put,
at 2116. Yes, I'm sorry.
yeah, that
it
was
is.
2116. So that was when I think they didn't have any of them and then they came back.
So does the new ordinance that is proposed restrict any retailers?
I think it has 3.
That's what I thought, because I read it. Is there any way that we can, is there any reason why we could not make it 0?
Can we go down in the number you're saying? So we have 3 approved. Could we reduce that number to 0?
No, we have 2 that have been approved under the existing ordinance. Now, this ordinance is a new ordinance. And it calling for the repeal of the previous ordinance. And yet the number of retail establishments in that particular, our new ordinance would be 3. If in fact, could we not make it 0? And 2 people that, the 2 establishments that have licenses, they would be grandfathered in and no further ordinance, retailers would be permitted.
Well, I think I'd have to look into whether or not that would achieve that result. But I think also we should just be careful with the words that we use, because there are no, as I understand, there are no retailers that have an approved site in this municipality yet.
There's none.
The only thing the council has done is issue resolutions of support. The council has not approved any sites in the municipality. Those sites still have to be approved by the land use board. I understand Mr. Rizzuto's question, which is, can the ordinance be changed such that have 3 retail uses and that's it? And I'll get back to you on that.
No, I mean, we have right now, under the existing ordinance, I believe there's 3 retailers permitted,
Yes.
okay? And I believe we have given some type of approval for 2. The one that is on Route 94, and then the one by the Dollar General.
Mhm.
Okay, now if we were to repeal the existing ordinance, would we then have the option of making that number for retailers 0? Since there are 2 already here.
I think what you would want to do is go to 2. Because what this is the licensing ordinance. So if you are permitting 2 in town, you would have the licenses for 2. So those 2 that you had already considered would get the 2 licenses, and you would
I
keep
see.
it at
So
2.
okay, so they would be covered under the new ordinance as well.
Right. If the intention was to allow those 2 to go forward, then you would want the licensing ordinance and no further licenses, and you would want the
Right.
licensing ordinance to limit it to 2 licenses.
Now, does that mean they have priority in coming forward?
To the land use board, you mean?
Yes, and also to the council?
I'm not sure what you've granted them other than
We've only
letters
given-
of support.
That is it.
Okay, so not necessarily. I mean, some other entity, let's say nothing happens with either of those, or they don't get funded, they don't, whatever, they just don't go forward, then some other entity could come forward for those,
Okay.
one of those
So
2
are we saying,
licenses.
that we gave 2 letters of support? Oh, your hearing aid up.
I can hear you.
Are we saying that we gave 2 letters of support? And if the land use board says no, for whatever reason, they're gone. Do we have any, Josh, legal liability in the fact that these people have spent money after they got a go-ahead letter from us to spend the money to go before the land use board and those costs based on our letter and their provisional license or whatever kind of license you want to call it? I'm worried about the legal liability.
I understand the question about the worry about legal liability. I'm not going to handicap a lawsuit that happens.
I know.
But I think the words matter here. The town council did not give a go-ahead letter. The town issued a resolution of support. It's now incumbent on those entities that have licenses that want to do business in Vernon to make the appropriate application before the land use board, and for the land use board to approve, deny, or grant a conditional approval based on the record that they have. And unless and until that happens, we have what we have now, which is there are no cannabis operators in any form in the municipality.
So if this ordinance were to go forward,
The revised
the
order.
revised ordinance, and be approved, the people that have gotten the letters of support from the council, which ordinance would they be forced under?
Depends on which Jessica, you want to talk about which land use regulations would apply to them?
So the purpose would be to repeal all the other land use ordinances. So the one that is before you would be the ones that would apply at the time of their application. So anyone who's applied already, these won't apply to, because there's what's called a
That's one.
time
To the
of
land use board.
application
The
rule
land use board, yes.
Okay,
to the land use board.
okay.
But anyone who hasn't applied would be subject to these new standards.
Okay.
So that's one.
Right.
So we could go to 0 and that would end any retailer from coming in, because nobody at this point has an approval.
But that, I think that's what Josh wants to get more information on, because, right?
And I think Jessica's idea of, if you want to limit it to two, then limit it to two in the licensing section.
Because we've already issued two
Instead of
resolutions.
taking, it'll create some confusion if your code says there's no cannabis retailers, but there are cannabis retailers operating in the town.
Mhm.
So can we limit it to two across the board then, instead of just retail? We're still able to do that, right?
Right, so there's
Right, so
three,
does-
we have three in each class permitted right now, so you could have it be two in each class if you wanted
Right.
to. Yes.
I have another quick question. I don't know who would answer this, maybe Jessica or Josh. So I was glad to see, the section about issuing a lien if the, the 2% taxes are not collected by the township for the business. What if the establishment does not own the property? What if it rents the property and doesn't own it? How do you put a lien on?
I can answer that. It goes
Okay.
with property. The liens go with property.
So if the establishment is renting their space, their landlord would be subject to the lien.
Yeah, liens go with property.
And their landlord would be extraordinarily unhappy with their property being and its operation.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So what you're saying is
very unhappy.
everything goes with the owner of the property,
All,
not
all tax liens.
all the tax.
We have instances where there's leased property. So then so I think that's the caveat to property owners. Any other comments or feedback? I know Mr. Sparta had some thoughts. I think Pat, brought up the one, question about limiting to two.
Yeah.
Brad did have a conversation with Mr. Rizzuto and myself earlier today. He's away, but, maybe, you could get some of the answers
Sure.
that we brought up.
Yep.
And, we could revisit this at a later meeting. I think it's important to go forward though, because, as Mr. Tadrick has brought up, there is a potential maybe for some litigation, I'm not sure, because of the vagueness of the current ordinances, issues that have gone before the land use board. So I think it's important that we work together, clean it up, make sure that our township is protected and looks the way we want it to look as far as businesses, protecting property owners and also collecting the fees, because that was the big push again for allowing these businesses in our town. So I think this is a really good start, and I really appreciate all the work that Jessica and Corey and Josh and Danelle put into this, because I know it was a collaborative effort between all of you, and it's definitely I think it looks a lot better and is a lot clearer. Is there anything else? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your
Excuse me.
time. Oh,
The only thing I would like to point out, that looking at the requirements for cultivation, so much of that becomes wishful thinking. Because as you know, when we made a visit to a facility, even with the expensive air scrubbers, Mr. Adrick and Mr. Bucieri and I saw, there was still a significant amount of I shouldn't say significant, but a noticeable amount of odor coming at particular times. To try and say you're going to make that become zero is impossible. Also, to say that you're going to hold that requirement of zero against a cultivator is also, in my mind, a potential, area of law of conflict that would have to be taken to court and handled there. So, much can be said, but in many cases, only so much can be done. The fact is very, very clearly. The fact is that this township opted in 4 or 5 years ago. If I'm not mistaken, 2011.
2021.
No, 21.
2021.
21, I'm sorry.
Yep.
We opted in and we're in it for another 5 years. Or for 5 years from that date. So for us to say that we're going to stop it by removing it, that we can't do. Maybe what we can do is work on the existing ordinances, tightening them up. Working on it that way, but to say that we can legislate them out of existence is not something that I would not want anybody to think that we've done.
If I may,
I did have actually one more question, that Mr. Sparta brought up, which I thought was a good point. As far as the tax collection, and I don't know if Danelle or Josh can answer this, if someone opens, they get approval, they have a cultivation, and they also have a manufacturing, and then they also have their own wholesaler, their own retailer. From what I understand, that 2% collection is from each of those businesses, but if it's owned by the same company and goes from one to another, could we potentially lose out on that 2%?
They're different licenses.
They're different licenses,
They're different licenses.
but what if they're the same company? Or what if they're sister companies and they sell it at a really cheap price to,
So, well, even,
you know what I'm saying?
even like sister companies, you still have to show your full books.
Could you really reduce that sale price? Is there, like, does the cannabis regulatory body have guardrails on, price control? I don't know.
I don't know about that.
Okay. Like I have a subsidiary, so I sell it to my subsidiary, but I sell it really cheap, so I don't have to pay a lot of tax on it. So it saves me there. And then when I sell it to my retailer, I sell it really cheap, so I don't have to pay 2% on that, right? You know what I'm saying? So I'm just, I don't know. I don't know how that, I don't know, we don't have that situation right now with the businesses that have come to us. They're all separate. I don't think any of them are the same company, but it is, I think, a valid concern, again, because the point of this, right? We were sold this for the revenue. So, if people are operating here, I want to make sure we get that 2% revenue.
Thing I want to clarify, Mr. Rizzuto said, when the three of us went to the cannabis cultivator, I was not on the council, so it was not a quorum.
Thank you.
That's true. Yes.
I want to set that straight.
I do have one other.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
For Josh, what Mr. Rizzuto said is that we have opted into the program. Is there anything in the law that says we have to do it? We opted in, but is there anything in the program itself by the state that says now you have to open these?
Well, you don't have to open them, but you've opted in. I'll check the legislation and what the state.
Yeah, see,
I mean,
to
the
clarify.
oversight of the municipalities is relatively limited under the statutory scheme. And it's primarily limited in the land use arena.
Mhm.
So I'd have to check to see, but I do agree with Mr. Rizzuto's comments that, you have to be careful now that we've opted in,
Mhm.
that we don't buy a lawsuit and trying to.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question. If you could verify that and check that out, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Josh. This is
Yeah.
Corey. Question I have on that, if they opted in, does that make it permitted in any zone if you don't have proper land use?
It very well may. I need to check the statute because I think what the statute, now that you've raised that point, I think what it said is unless you enact zoning regulations, it is a permitted use
And
in every zone in your municipality. Well, so
I
that
think
was
it
the-
actually defaults to retail and commercial and the other licenses in industrial is I think what it defaults to.
But I think that's what, to Corey's point, that was a way to incentivize the municipalities to enact
Mhm.
ordinances regulating cannabis in their municipality.
That's correct.
Any other comments or? Well, I appreciate it. I think it was a good discussion and we can get those questions answered and move forward. I really appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. We'll go on to the next item.
Thanks, Jessica and Corey.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Thank
guys. Thank you.
Have a great
Have a
night.
good night.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. public comments. So this comment time is for agenda items only. If you'd like to make a comment, please come up to the microphone, state your name and let us know which agenda item you'd like to address, and we'll be happy to hear your comments. May I have a motion to go into public comment, please?
Motion.
Motion made by Ms. Daffy. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tadrick. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The floor is open to the public.
Evening. Sally Rinka, Vernon. So first of all, I'm glad to see discussion for an introduction of an ordinance. I think on complex issues, it's the way to go. It prevents what you're having to correct right now, right? So what I'd like to see is a little more focus on the fact that it's allowed in the residential zones. I think that that opens up a Pandora's box of issues. So I've been attending the land use board meetings with that application, and it's probably fair to not discuss it too fully, although I'm just a member of the public, so maybe I can. But I can tell you that there are being presented lots of conflicts, things that don't conform, whether it's the buildings they're presenting or the land that they're disturbing, because it's a residential zone and it's a commercial project. So aside from the technicalities that it's presenting, I think that it is not a fair thing to do to the residents that are in these residential zones that bought homes to live in the peace and quiet of the residential zone. So I wanted to look on your document that you're reviewing for this ordinance. On page 2, the zones addressed are commercial and industrial for class 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then it says class 5 and 6 for commercial and retail. So in that whereas paragraph, there's nothing that connects to a residential zone until you go to the chart where it's implied or stated in there. So I don't know if that's a little bit of a conflict or an oversight but regardless, I still want to elaborate more on the issues that are arising for having this allowed in a residential zone. Personally, I think it needs to be kept in the commercial, industrial zones for this type of business. Again, it is producing contradictions in codes that the land use board will be dealing with, I'm sure. And in fact, there's a meeting this Wednesday night again for that application. And the Highlands is involved in this application, by the way. They have called it up for review. And I gave some documents tonight, some copies. I'm sure Joe has them in his land use board packet. Whereas there are a myriad of contingencies that are being put forth by the Highlands Council.
You have 20 seconds.
Really,
This goes fast, yeah.
it's really kind of important. I mean,
There's
well, anyway, so there's a myriad of a listing of contingencies. They need to get an LOI. I talked to someone who got one recently. It took 2 years to get an LOI because they disturbed wetlands and wetlands buffer. They do have to do a trade-off now with land because they have to repair the damage they did and give the DEP a trade-off in other land. How does a leasee do that? There's a lot of complexities here that it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. And then just one last point, if I may, the 1,000-foot distance. I don't see any reason to reduce it. I would like to see that stay as is, but please consider heavily the fact that none of this should be taking place in a residential zone. All right, thank you.
For anyone else in person that would like to make a comment?
My name is Stephanie Blaine, and I originally came prepared to make remarks, many of which were already addressed. So I'm kind of changing this on the fly a little bit. The only thing that was addressed, but I still feel is important, is the fact that none of this should be in a residential neighborhood. I want to make perfectly clear, I'm not opposed to this kind of business. I know there are people who are, and that's fine. I'm not opposed to it. It's a legal business. It hopefully will give money to Vernon, but it does not belong in an R2 type of, or any residential zoning for a whole lot of reasons. I think what I'm gonna say, without making reference to particular businesses, since that's been brought up already, I have seen a letter that was sent to Vernon, which contains a legal explanation, I'll say, of what they want to do or what they have to do with Highlands Council and some other things, and what they have to do with Land Use Board, et cetera. And just reading the restrictions and conditions, I'm not sure what term exactly to use, that is not, it's not possible in this particular area to accomplish, so far as I can see, by someone who's not owning the property. And it's not this council's fault, but that's really problematic legally. I'm just would like to urge everybody to, now that you are going to tighten up ordinances, please write them with teeth. Please write them with a lot of consideration as to every possible what if, what can we do, and let's get it right this time, because I'm not knocking anybody at all, but let's get it right, please.
Thank you. Anyone else in person?
My name is John Dayon. I actually live and have businesses on Maple Grange Road. And a point that you brought up is very good. The cannabis place that plans on growing is tied into a second business in Vernon at 92 Maple Grange Road. The building is being retrofitted for that. One of the questions I had with all these different criteria, you were talking mostly, I guess, about growing it and retailing it. What about the manufacturing aspect of it? Does that all fall into the same categories as all of it?
There are provisions for manufacturing. That is one of the allowable uses. So it was cultivation, also manufacturing, wholesaling, retail, and distribution. So that is
does the location at 92 Maple Grange Road, did they already have the permits or whatever is required?
Just gonna ask.
I don't
you that.
know if they've
I don't
gone
think
through
they
the
do.
land use board.
I know the building is being retrofitted for them for the past 4 months.
Have you called zoning?
I haven't talked to zoning,
I think you should.
but I know the owner and I know personally that it is being retrofitted for that.
Should be
I thought they had a stop.
Taking over that whole
stop work.
building.
I thought they had a stop work order for both, but I'm not sure.
Well, I don't see how there could be a work stop order on his end because it wasn't, nothing he was doing
Was going on back then.
was like illegal or what he shouldn't be doing, plowing up the property or anything like that. He's just finishing off his building so that these people can move in.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, and if you do change the law from 1,000 to 2,000 feet, Discovery Years Preschool is falling right within that 2,000 feet.
Right.
It's already 2,000 feet.
It's 2,000 feet currently.
Well, I can tell you, because I live right next door to Discovery Years and I own the business Vernon Self Storage right next to where the pot place is going to go in. And that smell, that is definitely my biggest complaint. Everybody that goes down Munsonhurst Road tells me that they can smell that all the way out on Route 23 by the old Ames or whatever shopping center that is. So you're right, that they can put in all the filtration and everything that they want, and you're going to still smell it. Right? I'm going to smell it at my facility. My customers are going to smell it. I'm going to possibly smell it at my house. And we also own property directly across the street from that where there's going to be a house that's going to be built. As my son already has approval. And I am one of the people that had to go before the DEP, the Highlands and the town for all these permits. And yes, it did take me 2 years to get all those permits before I bought the property from Andy Borzak. And in all likelihood, I will be buying Andy's house, if you know which house it is also.
I know Andy's house.
At some point, I'm in a verbal agreement with his family to purchase that house for one of my children also. So I'm tied really into that right there. And I do not want to be smelling it. And again, I'm not against pot. What people do in their own house is fine, everything. Just do it where you're not going to interfere with, especially if I was one of these people that was had the cultivation place growing around my residence, I would be up in arms.
The only thing I can tell you is odor, like sound, are two very, very difficult things to legislate. Because with sound, you're gonna require different, decibel.
I get all of that, and I get your point. I understand what you're saying. However, the town council does have the ability to make sure that they pass, that they conform to every variance that they're going for. And it was denied already. I mean, we were all here at the meeting, 2 months ago, and it was voted down. Now they're coming back for reconsideration. I don't get that reconsideration thing.
That's the land use board.
Yeah, but I mean, it was knocked down already. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Anyone else in person?
Louis Blaine, Vernon resident. I'm concerned on the R2 designation with the cultivation, because I think first this thought about, when you talk about putting a quote cultivation in an R2 area. I don't think anyone really looked closely at the natural resource requirements. They have both a water use, which seems to be out of this world. They also have a effluent and runoff into a water deficit area, and so forth. They have not given any details as to how any of this is going to be accomplished. I don't want to see that start in. Now, I realize the land use board in Highlands has to approve this, but I have a feeling they're going to try to sneak some of this by, because they have in other places. Again, I've got nothing against the business per se. I just looked at the numbers they gave on the way they're going to be using the property. Also, they're leasing it, so whatever they do, the owner of the property, we're going to have a 3 or 4 level legal issue in order to get anything done, because the owner of the property is going to get fined or whatever. Then he's going to have to push it through to the lessees. So before we get our fingers stuck in this, get it out of a residential area. We're low on water over there as it is. Just be really careful to explore all of those potential pitfalls. Done here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anybody else in person that wishes to address the council?
Hey, how's everybody today?
Thanks.
Good. Charles Peck, Vernon Township. So briefly, 1 or 2 items just to mention, reinforce the point that we should revise the 33160 Vernon Township Code to remove those R2 exceptions west of 517. These facilities, the cultivation facilities, really should not be in an R2 residential area. Now, my following comments are not really directed at any particular facility, but we only have a few facilities from which to draw upon as an example. So our current example has gone to extraordinary lengths to install security measures, which clearly indicate that there is some anticipated dangerous criminal activity. So as an example, 100 security cameras will be installed. Deliveries will be managed with lead and chase cars with armed guards. And there happens to be a bus stop almost directly in front of this facility, a school bus stop. So it really doesn't fit together when you think about it. I don't say that critically. We're working our way through this, but I thought that would be a relatively salient point to bring up. And additionally, there appears to be kind of a logical flaw way it all fits together. Again, not critically, because for an example, has to apply for a multitude of variances to get it into that R2 zone. And so it's not really coming together. So a homeowner, if they were to do some small adjustments to their residence, would have to apply for these variances and perchance could not get them. And with the current example, it seems like they will get them. Again, not critically speaking of that current example, just that's what we have to work with. So lastly, for the water usage, I know you've heard this several times, but it is confirmed that we're in a deficit area where the current facility is being a cultivator is applying. And while it is allowed, what we're doing is beginning to put the water resources at risk. So how often will wells run dry? A little hard to tell, but in drought conditions, we could end up in that situation. And it's the idea here that I'm trying to get across is the increased risk residential water supply. And we can avoid that as we move forward in this process of trying to understand how to manage. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Geary. I live in Vernon. I'm very worried about where you permitted this establishment to be. Residential area should not have any of this cultivation growing. How we just got explained, water is going to be an issue. The taxpayers, like I am one of them, I have a house there, the value is going to go down. So if my value goes down, it's mean I pay less taxes. And I'm not sure we're going to make any money here because it's not just me, it's like 100 houses around me. Whoever's going to say, oh, let me buy her house, she's right next to cultivation. We are going to lose money. We're going to have foreclosure. We are not going to make anything. Two, I think you should put on your resolution then a part of the money, if anything happened, then the people who are suffering around them have to pay less taxes. You know, I'm glad the policemen, I'm glad the children are going to get money or whatever, but we are going to suffer. We should be compensated for it. I was wondering too, why don't you put in your in the paper, like what you are trying to change? What do you just change it to? We will not allow any more application on September 2023. Not two, not one. We are not going to have any more. If you just put a date on it like this, we are not going to get any more problems. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, Ann Larson. I'm in Glen also. I'm actually speaking about this proposed ordinance. Glancing at it, and maybe you can help me, it looked to me like there were 18 possible licenses. There was classes one, you know, there was the cultivation, there was the manufacturer, and then 4 or 5, and then 6 is the driving, the vehicles. It totals 18, correct?
That's, yeah, I believe
That is absolutely absurd that we.
There's no license.
There's no license.
Oh, excuse me, so 3 less. Okay, so we're down to 15.
I believe that's what the original,
That's gotta be correct. Okay. What Mr. Rizzuto said was absolutely very smart. I mean, the 2 that are on the table already, grandfather them in, but instead of making what we seem to have a habit of is these vague ordinances that everybody is scratching their head wondering exactly what it says. Delineate exactly the 2 outstanding license applications for A, B, and C company, C, D, E, and F company. And then at least you know what you're talking about, but everything is always vaguely written and subject to ambiguity. And I mean, that's why we have all these dilemmas all the time. This thing was so poorly thought of in the first place. And here we have people in a residential zone being faced with this horrible situation with this company going there. I was present at the land use meeting. Let me ask you, is land use advisory or do they have authority?
They have legal authority, Randy.
They do have the authority to say no. It's not an advisory capacity where it's.
All right, unless I'm wrong.
Well, they're a statutory created board. They're governed by the municipal land use.
So they say no and it's no. Okay, all right, that's the end.
Well, yes and no.
An appeal.
Okay,
They can, no, they can make they can
a recommendation.
recommendation to the town, which
Huh?
I think they did when this whole thing started.
No.
And they said no, and the town,
Pulled it.
right, so I mean, there's statutory responsibility by laws that they have to follow, but at some point they can also be an advisory board to the council.
Hold on. I think what you're referring to is the referral of a zoning ordinance to the land use board for comment.
Right.
The township council has no authority to overrule an approval for a land use granted by the land use board.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking.
But a denial.
No, you go to Superior Court.
You have to go to court. No, I'm talking about the time when
Okay.
they sent the
Ordinance.
down and
Yes.
land use board said no,
Okay.
and they wrote it, yeah.
So then they go to court. They don't come back to the township.
On a land use application for site plan approval or variance approval.
I mean, because if you had been present at the land use meeting and you heard this character making his pitch for the security that they're gonna have with the chase vehicles and the leapfrogging nonsense going right past our high school where the new drivers are coming out, learning how to drive and navigate on our twisting and winding streets. You have many bus stops, not just one, but many bus stops in the pathway between 565 and then the other property on Maple Grange. This was a plan hatched in, I don't know, John Gotti's dreams, because this is just so ridiculous. So please, I'm asking you, when you do these changes, for example, like Mr. Rizzo said, the two that are okay and 0 going forward, you keep complicating things when we have 2, let's put 2, and then those 2 are gone. Now we can take 2 more. Well, do they mean we couldn't have 2 more, or can we have 4? Please make it clear. It's just so ambiguous everywhere you go that there's so much confusion. If there's going to be a total of 2, those 2 it is. And then maybe you reconsider down the road if one of them fails to operate. But I mean, to have a potential of 15 cannabis, I mean, what are we going to change the name of the high school team to the smokers? Or I don't understand what these people are thinking. 15 ridiculous uses. I mean, in this beautiful town. Who thought this up? So.
Not this council.
Thank
Thank you for that. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I mean, the residential zone, these poor people, this is their investment, their life savings in these homes. And now we're just gonna casually, these, carpetbaggers can come in here. They're not living here. They're taking their money back to wherever they live. They're not staying here. They're not dealing with the ramifications of what they're doing here. And these people in the area are stuck with the residual damage. It's all wrong. So thank you for considering this, and please, when you make the ordinances, please tighten all the loopholes. Thank
Before
you.
you go,
Yes,
you mentioned the classification
yes,
that require licensure.
yes.
That's not the staff, that's not the town.
That was on the, okay. But we had 3 of each on the list.
No, but all of this emanates from the state,
I get that.
okay? And somebody comes in here and says, I don't want a retail establishment, I want to grow. I don't want to grow or have a retail establishment, I want a wholesale. I don't want to, all of these things are based upon what the state approves. Now, once the township opted in by the previous council, okay?
We got them all.
I was cast. All right, so for us to say, I'm not going to do it, you now place yourself in a position of saying, as Mr. Zelinski said, buying illegal problem, buying illegals. Because once the state says you can do it, and you opted in, now you have to go with the parameters that were established.
They were established by the state, but can we opt in and say only, for example,
That's what we're trying to do, but you can't get rid
Okay,
of the areas that were already approved.
right.
What you can do is make them a little bit tighter. And that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And another thing is these application fees, $2,500. Quite honestly, I mean, some couples spend that for a weekend away. $2,500 is peanuts. Want to make it something where you have some skin in the game, $50,000. I mean, I don't know why you would make it $2,500. It's a joke to these companies. They're all the same companies. When you look at how exactly what you were describing, Mr. Cherry, when you were saying, how they're leasing to each other. This is how these shell corporations, we all know, they're not gonna have any revenue left over unless they're taxed on gross receipts. There's gonna be nothing left over because they're going to just keep layering themselves in different entities that are gonna be eating up the profits. So they're, dreaming of this 2%, it's foolhardy, very foolhardy. Thank you again.
Good evening. My name is George Graham. I'm a resident of Vernon. I just wanted to bring a few things before the board. This R2 zone should not be allowed no matter what. Doesn't belong in or around any residential, daycare, school zones. It belongs strictly in industrial, commercial zones. My wife and I moved to this town for the pre and serenity that you have here, and this is going to be ruined by this. Traffic studies been done for this business. We don't even know what the expected increase in traffic is going to be. What measures are going to be in place, they can safely manage the increased traffic flow in the area. Without cautions, the traffic flow will create danger to residents and children. Town currently, to my knowledge, has a burden to fix their current roads. This increased traffic will cause more extensive repairs to the roads we have already. This R2 zone will have a negative impact on property values. It can be as high as 11% difference. Financial security for families, safety, quality of life. Request that the board really take this into deep consideration for the security of the community. This increased traffic will cause more air pollution to the clean air that we do have in the town. My question too is, has the board reviewed the lease agreement between?
We don't do that.
Me?
No, we wouldn't do that.
Who does that?
I don't think land use gets involved in that either. Yeah, that's between the leasing and the property owner. That's not something that would fall under.
To me, it should be something that should be taken into consideration only because, for all we know, he only gave them a 2-year lease. So we're going into this not
I
knowing.
don't think legally we have any right to review their lease. That's private business. Am I?
It's a private transaction.
Yeah, it's a private. I'm not saying you don't have I understand your concern, but we don't have that authority.
Somebody could decide to pull the plug in 2 years and we've gone through.
I do think, though, that we should make it into our ordinance that the property is owned by an applicant. I think we should address this in our ordinance.
It's gonna be something we can discuss. Sure.
But honestly, it shouldn't be, a business like this shouldn't be allowed to be sublet by a landowner. It should be strictly owned, or provided by the owner themselves. This is what I'm doing with this property, not subletting for somebody. The other concern that I have, and I'm sure a lot of other residents do, is a trust fund should be collected from this company for any damages, smell, noise that may be imposed on the residents that are directly within. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in person that would like to address? Mr. Kemlo?
Good talk about marijuana. I know there's going to be an opportunity when the resolutions are actually, when the ordinances are actually introduced. But yes, I will agree. The land use board's recommendation was not to move forward. Council ignored it and did it. There was an issue about the number. A former board president who's no longer with us wanted unlimited. And then it was finally decided there would be 3. And then when it was written, it was 3 per zone. In fact, I sent that to Mr. Tadrick because he wasn't aware of it. R1, R2, commercial. So this has been a moving target. I think that you do run the risk when you start making these changes of people coming forward and saying, oh, wait a minute, we started this process under the original agreement. So it's real hard to match up with a moving target. So I just think you need to have caution. As far as the 2,000 feet, I think that was arbitrary and capricious. We've talked about this for a long time. I think it was intended to keep a certain person from being able to have one. As the crow flies, and they had to go over a fence and through private property to get there. The federal law is 1,000 feet. League of Municipalities says 0. You could put one right across the street from the high school. Legally, you could. So I think it's dangerous too when you start trying to legislate people out or regulate people out of the ability to have a business. So I'll leave it at that. but you guys need to be real careful when you start making these kind of changes. I'm really here to talk about ordinance 2319. 2319 is to address a speed zone and a school zone, which really isn't a school as we know it. It's a private school, it's not a public school. There was one on Route 94 that has not gone out of business, but could reopen. What happens when they want to be a school zone? What about the one on Maple Grange when they want to be a school zone? Just after the accident happened, they moved the 35-mile-an-hour sign to within about 50 feet of where the warning 35-mile-an-hour ahead was almost like the Georgia speed trap. You came around the corner, warning, it was there. And I think that was just done by DPW to try to address some concerns. There was talk about doing a traffic study. Mr. Tadrick and I both drove by there on multiple occasions. There was no indication that the traffic study was being done. There were no rubber strips on the road. There was no police presence there. They've now changed it to coming from the north. Before you get to Drew Road, it changes to 35 miles an hour. It used to be there was the warning of the 35-mile-an-hour zone, and then it started down the school in the residential area, which was normal. And then coming north, it didn't go to 45 until you got past Drew Road around the corner, and then it went to 45. I think making it a school zone is wrong. It is a private school. Is it going to be when children are present? Is it going to be 24 hours a day? You go by there most of the time. There's no activity. There's vehicles in the parking lot, and there's kids in the building, out in the playground in the back, but they're not on the street. They're not near the street. I think this is kind of a knee-jerk reaction. I think it's going to lead to more scofflaws. It's 35 miles an hour on Route 94. The police don't even drive 35 miles an hour on Route 94. So I think the council should really think long and hard about this. I know you're trying to appease one person. I know there was an issue that, oh, we have to do something about this. I find it troubling. I drive that road all the time. I know that what they did, I know the step that they've taken to make it 35 before you come around the curve is a great compromise, and I think it should be left at that. It shouldn't be a school zone because then all other private schools are going to want the same. I think you're just opening something that you may not be able to close.
Okay, thank you.
No, my 3 minutes are come and gone. Thank you.
They're done, yep. Is there anybody else in person? Nice. Virtually?
Yes, Paul Weber.
Okay, Mr. Weber?
Actually, it's Cynthia Weber. I just want to say thank you to all of you for all that you do, all the work that you do for the Township of Vernon. One thing I just want to do is correct Mr. Tadrick. I believe it was you today that had the 911 moment of silence. It's not 23 years, it's actually 22 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else virtually, Marcy?
I have no other hands up.
Okay, seeing no other members of the public that wish to come forward, may I have a motion to close the floor?
Moved.
Actually, I'm sorry, a hand that's went up. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Deborah Smorto.
Smorto?
Who the hell is that?
Hello?
Excuse me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Deborah Smorto. I'm the owner of Fields of Green Montessori School. And yes, we are a private school. We have been in Vernon for 26 years and have been at that location for almost 20. The reason we have requested to make that a school zone is because of the multiple accidents that have come at our property. And we have been working for 20 years to try and turn that area into a lower speed limit. The last accident came on August 6th, and within 6 minutes, someone would have been killed who was in my parking lot. And it was at a time of day where there would have been children there had it been a weekday. So that was where I drew the line and am requesting this from the board. The police and the mayor have been in very supportive of this move. We have had a traffic study done twice. You may not have seen it, but there was just recently one has been done a week ago. So we have been doing everything we can and crossing our Ts and dotting our Is. And this is for the safety of the children and the parents who come in and out of our lot. And I think that's it. And I know that this is coming up later in the agenda, so I guess I'll wait until then. And am I allowed to talk again if that comes up when I'm allowed?
The public, there is another public comment time, so yes, you can speak at the second public comment if you choose.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I have no other hands up.
Okay, we have a motion to close the floor.
Move it.
Moved by Mr. Rizzuto, second by Mr. Tadrick. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And the floor is closed. Moving on to our next agenda item. He receives a copy of the bills list. Councilmembers have any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, Mr. Tadrick? Rizzuto?
No.
Kind of light on the bills list now.
I did a double check run.
Okay. Approval of minutes. We have minutes from the August 28th, 2023 executive session and August 28th, 2023 regular meeting.
Move it.
I'm gonna just put them together. May I have a motion to approve those two meetings, executive and regular meeting, August 28th?
Move it.
By Mr. Tadrick, second by Ms. DeStassi. May I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember DeStassi? Yes. Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Tadrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Bucieri?
Yes.
Sorry, Council President.
Okay.
Motion carries.
And the consent agenda. I'm going to read through these resolutions, and then when I'm done, or, stop me as I go, if anybody wants to pull one out. Resolution 23-29, refund overpayment, block 478, lot 30, Kudo. Resolution 23-30, refund for totally disabled veteran, block 601, lot 31, Gillette. Resolution 23-31, refund for totally disabled veteran, block 357, lot 1, Hanley. Resolution 23-32, canceling taxes for total disabled veteran, block 357, lot 1, Hanley. Resolution 23-33, resolution amending resolution 22-58 to update an appointment to the Vernon Township Council for an unexpired term. Resolution 23-34, chapter 159, resolution requesting approval of revenue and appropriation, amending the 2023 budget as a revenue and appropriation of $75,000. Resolution 23-35, resolution awarding CC number 6-2023 to Municipay and a fair and open award for online payment processing vendor. And resolution 23-36, resolution amending contract for resolution 23-20.
I would like to pull 23-235, please.
22-35, okay. I'll pull that. What is this, Joe?
I think there's an additional one. It's not listed here.
Yes. Oh, she added it last.
Yeah.
You're right. It's not on my thing. Resolution 23-59, resolution appointing to the Vernon Township Council. We'll add that to the consent agenda. Or should that need to be separate?
2359 is a resolution that's already been passed.
That's been passed.
Oh, I'm
I just gave that to you as reference.
Just for.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. You got me.
Natalie,
I screwed up.
I'm sorry. You asked me some questions
You're out.
today, so
I know.
It really is. Is there anything else? Mr.
No, that's it. I've gotten you twice.
Okay, I'm confused. Well, three, really, right?
Three.
I have to wait for the third one. I'm on notice now. Okay, we're pulling out 23-35. Is there anything else? We're going to, that's it? Okay. All right, may I have a motion for resolution 23-29, resolution 23-30, resolution 23-31, resolution 23-32, resolution 23-33, resolution 23-34, and resolution 23-36.
Move it.
Moved by Mr. Tadrick. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. DeStassi. Does anyone have any question or comments regarding those resolutions? Nope. Have a roll call vote.
Councilmember DeStassi?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Tadrick?
Yes.
Council President Bushieri?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Resolution 23-235. May I have a motion for resolution 23-235?
I'd like to ask a question on that,
We need
please.
to have a motion for it first, though.
Move it.
Moved by Mr. Tadrick. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rizzuto. Questions or comments?
The question I would like to ask is the remittance going to be daily? I didn't see it explicitly, when people pay, will we be receiving the money as it's paid?
Yes, it would be no different than paying online right now for taxes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't see in the resolution where it said it would.
Yeah, it's immediate. Well, I mean, within a period of time. If you're using a credit card,
Day or two.
Credit card's usually pretty immediate. It's actually like electronic checks take longer, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
All right, may I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Stacy?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Tadrick?
Yes.
Council President Bushieri?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Introduction of ordinance 2319, an ordinance of the Township of Vernon, County of Sussex, State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing chapter 99 entitled Vehicles and Traffic to establish a school zone adjacent to the Fields of Green Montessori School. May I have a motion to introduce ordinance 2319?
Motion.
Moved by Mr. Tadrick, second by Ms. DeStacy. Anyone have a question? I mean, typically I do for the first reading a comment, but any comments?
No comment.
Okay, may I roll call vote?
Councilmember DeStacy?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Tadrick?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I have public comment. This public comment is for any topic. It is not limited to agenda items. You'll have 5 minutes. Anyone in the public in person who wishes to address the council can come forward and just state your names. May I have a motion to open the floor to public?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Tadrick. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. DeStacy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion. All right, and the floor is open. And then first one.
Who on cannabis? Anyway, gonna finish anyway. So is there anything that precludes you from taking out the R2?
I don't think so.
We could be considering that.
Is there anything that will preclude us from taking out the R2
I
zone?
don't believe so.
So it's not required to have it in all zones that exist in the town. So up to the discretion of the municipality
Yes.
to make those zones. Yeah, okay, I really hope that's fully considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Asked all of you to consider legislation very carefully with regards to teeth and everything else, and failed to ask when council writes a resolution, could you briefly explain the procedure? Basically, all I would like to know, if it's possible, is do you write it and then show it to either Mr. Zelinski or some other attorney, or do you just write it on your own, or how does, very briefly, how does that work? I'm asking for a lot.
No, there's a couple different ways it can happen. Sometimes council members will give ideas to the attorney who will draft the ordinance. Sometimes the attorney will draft an ordinance and receive comments back from the council. Sometimes other members of the administration will prepare a draft ordinance and it gets, but all ordinances in the state of New Jersey go through 2 processes, which is the introduction by the council, which is the first reading, and the second reading is the public hearing, at which time the public is able to come and express their views. Also, during the hearing part or even an introduction, the council may amend the ordinance and add or take away provisions from it. If they do, and those provisions are substantive changes, that restarts the first reading, second reading clock. But that's very broad, generally speaking, how.
After I sat down, I was like, should have asked the obvious question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Again, this will be quick. The thought occurred to me after hearing what Ms. Rinker just said about taking the residential zone out of the whole cannabis ordinance. Is there a way to perhaps put like a Liz pendant or something on that order to make the land use board aware that that's something that we are entertaining? I mean, that it's coming down so that they can at least hold this in abeyance.
I'm not quite.
It's just, for example, the law is changing and the law will be X. And if that's going to be the ordinance, why can't we do that and make them aware now that that's not going to be a permitted use in that zone?
Nothing's been adopted
It
tonight.
hasn't been adopted, but if we do adopt it, can we make them aware immediately? It's meeting Wednesday, is there not?
Well, nothing's been adopted tonight. Nothing will be adopted tomorrow.
It hasn't even had a first reading. Yes, this was just a conversation.
There's no way to.
Has to be two meetings.
Yeah, they have.
Weeks apart, two meetings apart.
And do they take into account things that you are weighing here before they make
Their
decisions?
application is in, something, they're in under the original ordinance.
So the land use board will decide the application based on the existing land use code at the time the application's filed.
Just trying to find a smarter way to do this. Okay, all right. I'll keep at it though. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in person that wishes to address the council? Anybody virtually, Marcy?
Yes, Debbie Smarto.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Deborah Smorto again, owner of Fields of Green Montessori School. Does this ordinance include the lowering of the speed limit to 25 miles per hour as we had discussed at the last meeting? Did you hear my question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, yes.
Is that what's included in the school zone?
Yes, so the school zone limit is 25 miles per hour. Is that correct, Gina?
Yeah.
Yes. So when something's designated a school zone, then that's the limit, correct? Okay.
Normally, it's also when children are present.
Yes.
Okay. And can you just tell me the next steps here of what goes on? I'm not familiar with how this all works.
Maybe Ms. Bright, I'm sorry.
There needs to be a public hearing, which will occur at the next meeting where members of the public will be allowed to come and give their views, statements, opinions regarding the ordinance. After the public hearing portion closes, the council will then vote. The ordinance will be either adopted or denied by the council. There'll be a time period when parties can file legal challenges to it, and then it will, if no challenges are filed, ultimately become effective.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other virtual comments, Marcy?
Yes, Jesse Palladini.
Ms. Palladini?
Yes, good evening. I'm sorry, I lost track. Is this for any topic?
This is any topic, yep.
Okay. I'm gonna discuss something that's new to me that I never knew anything about, but I was informed that township employees, not police, but regular employees, are using a program to communicate that is called Power DMS. And they're using this instead of email. I don't know anything about this firsthand. I actually received an anonymous letter, but I often receive anonymous letters, a couple of times a year, maybe. So what this letter told me is that these are not subject to Oprah, and employees are using this program. So knowing nothing about it, I put in an Oprah request for the Power DMS log, which is what I would do if I wanted to see regular emails. I would put in a request for an email log. So I don't know anything about this program. I'm wondering what you know about it. I'm wondering who authorized it. When I went back on the bills list, I saw that there was a bill, and don't quote me, please, I don't remember. It was something like 6,000 something dollars. I believe it was on the last bills list. So my question to you is mainly, what is this program? Why are municipal employees using it? And why am I not able to get a log of this Power DMS? It seems to me that that's a violation of Oprah. So I'd like to know more about it from you.
I can't answer that question. I don't know if mayor or administrator can answer that right now, or.
EMS is.
Let me ask, do any of you know about Power DMS? Any of you on the council?
No.
I do not know about it, no.
Okay, nobody else knows about Power DMS?
Ms. Nausmite?
Power DMS is, it's a program that we actually can do, send out memos to our employees, update them with our policies, and it's all internal. And that's what that is what it's for.
Yes, but government business is public business. So you're not allowed to have a form of communication that the public does not have access to. So I'm wondering why my Oprah request was rejected, and it was stated that there are no documents for my request. And again, any communication, any internal communication among municipal employees is public business, and the public should have access to it. Unless, of course, it's something confidential, litigation, or, those things that come under the parameter of executive session. So I'm not going to press you on it tonight, since none of you are familiar with it, but I would ask that you look into it, because I will come back with this question at the next meeting. If it's communication among employees, then it's public business, and the public has access to public business.
I do have one question.
I'll give you an update on that.
One for Ms. Kraus. Is it two-way communication, or is it, you said it was like for memos? Is it?
So we can put out memos to our employees. They review them and they just check off that they saw it. Any updated on our policies and procedures, we can post that on there. So we show that they actually reviewed the policy and procedure.
And again,
It's not a vehicle for two-way I'm asking my question. Is it a vehicle for two-way communication?
Primarily for approvals, two-way from the standpoint.
But not like a type.
Not like an no. For example, when we update a personnel manual, rather than asking each department head to make sure everybody has seen that and signed off on it, we will put it on Power DMS. Individuals have to go online, read it, and indicate it that they read it.
I'm having envisioning getting a new credit card, and you scroll through up everything.
Yeah.
I agree, it checks.
Right, exactly right.
Okay, does that answer your question, Ms. Palladini?
Well, not really, because I knew what it was, because I did research it. My question is, did you all know about it? And again, all government business is public business.
Yes.
So even if you're asking an employee, have you read this policy? That's still public business. So I guess I will ask you at the next meeting, hopefully you'll know a little more about it. Why is that not subject to Oprah?
So, excuse me, Mayor. So, you may send a message to an employee. We noticed that you have been tardy for 5 times in the last month. Can you provide any reason for this behavior? And asking them to justify their behavior on something like that?
We don't use it for that.
No, I didn't say you don't use it. Could it be?
You know what?
It would be inappropriate to do it like that.
Well, I know there are a lot of things that aren't appropriate, but there are a lot of things that are done that are inappropriate. And I think that's what Mrs. Palladini, my question is as well.
may I read to you the letter I got? It's very short and I have not used my 5 minutes. You guys
No,
have.
you haven't. Go ahead.
Okay. What I got was the following. I write to you anonymously due to fear of retaliation. It is my understanding that Vernon Township employees are using a program to communicate that is mostly used in law enforcement, and it is called Power DMS. They were instructed to use this program to send inter-office emails because they are not Oprah-able. There also seems that there are a couple of offices that are running amok, closing their offices, working from home, bringing their children to work. Well, I'm not concerned about the last part. My main concern is this use of Power DMS, which is not Oprah-able. So when I tried to test it and get the log for that, I was indeed told there is no document.
If I could just clear something up, I believe Ms. Palladini, your Oprah request was for the Power DMS log, correct?
Correct, yes.
And in that request, the assumption is made that Power DMS generates and maintains a log.
Well, email does, so, it has to be subject to public scrutiny.
No, I understand that, but the assumption in the Oprah request is that Power DMS generates a log, which it does not, and that's why there are no records responsive to the Oprah request.
Well, then I would say that that's illegal use of that program because government business is public business.
I understand that the Oprah request is for the log and there is no log.
Right. That was the request, correct? I just ask you to look into it, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other virtual comments, Marcy?
I have no other hands up.
Okay, you get in here, huh?
Question was asked. I don't know if it was clearly answered. Timing of the school zone. I know that some of the schools, they say when children are present, some have certain hours. I don't know what the intentions is. I look into this before I think based on what I said tonight, there should have been more discussion before it was just arbitrarily passed.
Yes,
Well,
We have our second reading.
it's the first reading, yeah.
I know the first reading was passed to continue with it. I didn't hear any questions really asked about this. We did not see, I drove by several times, did not see any indication that a traffic study was being done, which we were assured one was going to be done.
I think you were out of the room when I said it was done last week.
I'm speaking to the town council president, and the town council president is the one that should be answering the questions unless the town council president wants to involve a council member. I don't know that a traffic study was done. It didn't appear from what I could see that it was. I spoke about it with Mr. Tadrick. Drove by a couple times, seemed to indicate that it's all the same thing. I hope you're gonna look into this because it just ends up making scofflaws of people. And if it's that they're dropping kids off in the morning and they're picking kids up in the afternoon, then it shouldn't be 25 miles an hour the whole day. So I just hope the council is asking the right questions here. That's all I'm asking.
Good point.
Thank you very much. And as far as the log, there probably should be a log. If it's being used to communicate with staff, then there should be some kind of a log of what's being communicated. So I hope you'll look into that as well. It makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? Oh, all right. May I have a motion to close the floor to public comment? Motion made by Mr. Tadrick. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rizzuto. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The floor is closed. Mayor's comments.
Madam Council President and other distinguished council members, my comments tonight are inspired by key weekend events that took place in our town. This past weekend was one of those weekends that enhanced the pride that I feel for our town and then amplified the many reasons that I so strongly believe that Vernon is a very good place to live and to raise a family. This weekend started with our town's emotional and patriotic 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. This year's 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony was very special, due in part to the fact that it was highlighted by our town's dedication of a rare 9/11 survivor tree seedling that Vernon was awarded by the National 9/11 Memorial and Museum. As I previously explained, the 9/11 survivor tree is a tree that was severely damaged, snapped roots and burned branches that was discovered at Ground Zero in October 2001. This tree was dug up and removed from the rubble of Ground Zero and placed in the care and treatment of the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. After 9 years of nursing this tree back to recovery and rehabilitation, in 2010, it was returned to and replanted at the site of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. Since 2010, the 9/11 Memorial and Museum has received thousands of requests for seedlings from this special tree. Each year, hundreds of these requests are received from not just municipalities and organizations in our country, but also from countries and organizations throughout the world. However, the 9/11 Memorial and Museum grants only a small number of these requests each year. And for 2023, Vernon Township was one of the fortunate recipients of a seedling from the 9/11 survivor tree. And we now have this special tree planted in a special place in front of our municipal center. The day continued with an outstanding street fair that was sponsored by the Vernon Chamber of Commerce. Through the Vernon Chamber of Commerce's dynamic planning, organizing, directing, coordinating, and controlling efforts, Vernon's Main Street was closed to automobile traffic and occupied by a host of vendors of various types who offered a diversity of goods and services to the hundreds of residents and visitors that the street fair attracted to our town. Vernon is indeed a very good place to live and raise a family. And this weekend was but just one example of that fact. Council President and council members, and here's my comments for tonight.
Mayor. Council comment. Sassy, we'll start with you.
I would like to congratulate the Eagle Scout for his creation of the reflection at the Glenwood Cemetery. My parents are buried there, and I will definitely make an effort to today. Howard, I also would like to congratulate you on a very emotional and respectful tree ceremony on Saturday. That was a wonderful thing that was erected in front of our town hall. I want to thank all the residents who came to speak against the R2 zoning on the cannabis cultivation. It's great to see community involvement in our ordinances and resolutions. I also want to thank the chamber for all their hard work at the Vernon Street Fair. It was very successful, and I personally met a lot of great. And I do agree that we need to consider looking at having a log on this program. I think that activity should be publicly available. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tadrick? Nothing?
Nope.
Mr. Rizzuto?
I have no comments.
Okay. Thank you everyone for attending. I do want to echo the sentiments by the mayor and Peg Sassy. It is an honor to have one of those saplings. I believe the mayor said only 3 of those saplings are given out every year. And 3 Vernon residents did perish on September 11th when our country was attacked. So I think it is very poignant and touching that we're able to have that tree, positive symbol of life, of continuing to move forward here in our municipal building. So I really do appreciate Ms. Paolini's, Ms. Paolini is her last name, right? Yeah. Her work towards that and your work towards that. It was a very touching time, and really appreciate that. Thank everyone for attending, and may I have a motion to close?
Motion.
Been made by Mr. Sassy, second by Mr. Tadrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are closed. Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah.
Mhm.